Bible's an authority. I mean, we have to
Right.
get to that point where even accepting that. But I get what you're saying. I understand.
Okay,
Okay,
good. I
well,
could dig it.
well, good. I asked you a question.
Sure.
Is,
Like I said,
is,
you're going to
is
get two questions. This one and one
is
other
your
one, and then I'm
reasoning,
going to, if you
is
agree, hold on,
your
Darwin,
reasoning,
Darwin. If you,
I heard what you had to
okay, but
say.
I want to make sure
I
you agree
heard
to
what
these
you had to
terms.
say.
But I want to, are you going to agree to these terms?
I heard what you had to say. Now, I asked you a question. Is your reasoning the final authority?
If you agree
Yes.
to my terms, which is you can ask me two
Okay,
questions,
you
and
can
then
ask
I'll
me any
answer
questions you want. I'll be glad to answer them.
two and two. Okay, so your first
Okay, good.
question, please repeat.
Question, is your reasoning the final authority as to what is the case in reality?
Yes. Second question.
Okay, good. How do you know, given your finite limitations, that anything that you reason is true and correct and cannot be wrong?
Sure, because some things that I reason I can actually test and demonstrate. Okay, so now my turn for my question. You claim objective morals exist. I would like you to demonstrate objective morals exist in which
I never said that.
you do not believe that objective morals exist?
I have never said that objective
Oh,
moral.
okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So then,
That's to your
oh,
first question. Next
oh,
question.
okay, good, beautiful. Please demonstrate that objective morals exist within the framework that you believe in the Christian God without asking me a question.
I didn't say that objective morals exist.
Didn't say that you did. I'm just asking you to do that, please.
Okay, well, I don't argue that objective morals exist.
Oh, okay, beautiful. Go ahead.
Okay, so those are two questions.
Sure, go
Now,
ahead.
you said that you can test things in order to know that something is true and correct where you cannot be wrong, right?
Yes, one question. Go ahead.
Okay, good. No, I'm just clarifying what you've
No,
already
that was
mentioned.
a question. Go ahead.
Okay, please don't be childish about this.
Well,
Okay.
I think that
No,
you
no, I
believe in
already
objective
asked the
morality, and I
okay,
let you go on
you're
that.
being you're being
I really hate this fucking Darth Dawkins with his, oh, should I say Gary, with his, oh, I just have a clarifying question. That's all I have. But when you try and ask this Gary dishonest Darth Dodger Dawkins, thanks Hillary, um, a question or a clarifying question, he goes off his nut. He has a catatonic experience and he insults you, he kicks you, and then he brags about it to his friends in the room of how dishonest these atheists are. You see what they do? This is what they do. Gary.
you're being childish.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, I'll just go with it.
Okay,
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm trying to act like an adult here,
Okay. Go ahead.
right?
Go ahead. First question.
Good. Good. Now, given your finite limitations, in terms of your observation and experience, um, in order for you to make rational conclusions about reality, would it have to be true that the uniformity of nature is true? And would it also have to be true that the laws of logic are universal and absolute?
I don't know. Next question.
Okay, then how can you, if you don't, if
Yes, it would absolutely have to be true that the laws of logic are absolute and true. I think that's what he said. What did he say? Let's see what
you're
he
being
says.
childish.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, I'll just go with it.
Okay,
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm trying to act like an adult here.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. First question.
Good. Good. Now, given your finite limitations, in terms of your observation and experience, um,
Given your finite limitations,
in order for
based
you,
on your observations and experience, okay. Now he's talking to a fellow human being who essentially does have those limitations, but then so does Darth Dawkins. And if Skylar Fiction has those limitations, then so does Darth Dawkins have those limitations. No? mean, they're both the same species of ape, so they have the same limitations. So it's impossible. It's impossible. Oops, hold on a second. It's impossible that. Now I've lost my track. Yeah. It's impossible that Darth Dawkins would know something innately or in a way that is special or unique to Gary. It doesn't follow that if he, as a human being, can experience this thing that he says he's talking about, then we should all be able to experience it without him having to tell us. So I think his argument falls flat there. Now, Christ brings a sword. I'm sorry that I muted. I was going to show your post, but I clicked on hide instead because I'm an idiot. Sorry. Christ brings a sword. He writes, "There is no hope without Jesus Christ. You're going to hell." Right. So that's the argument. There is no hope without Jesus Christ. You're going to hell. What is? Oh, I'm sorry. That's your claim. There is no hope without Jesus Christ. You're going to hell. That's your claim. What is your argument that is going to convince me that what you are saying is actually not total nonsense, psychotic nonsense? If you want to type it again, I'll show it so everybody can see it. Hey, Darth Dawkins and Skylar, carry on, please.
You to make rational conclusions about reality. Would it have to be true that the uniformity of nature is true? And would it also have to be true that the laws of logic are universal and absolute?
I don't know. Next question.
Okay, then how can you, if you do not know, then what are the preconditions for you to rationally conclude that something actually is true?
All right, we've got an issue here with Christ brings a sword. He says, "My job is not to convince you. My job is to warn you." All right. Firstly, I'd like to know, sir, if you have a job, congratulations, not everybody does. But who is your employer? Just exactly who is your employer? Now I'm trying to... this might do it. Just give me one moment, all right? All right. I think I've got it right there. Okay, I'm sorry for holding you guys up, but this is a one-man show, as you know. Right, so there you go. There is the... What's that? There is the chat, and I'm going to try and find how I can bring myself on screen. This is terrible. There we go. How about like that? No. How about that one? There we go. All right. I think I'm getting there. Okay, so let's just switch over here. to your comment. My job is not to convince you. My job is to warn you. I do not need to convince you of the truth. Okay, so we got a few things we need to have definitions of. You say, where did you write it? Where did you write it? Oh, look, I'll show you the deleted message. There it is. You say there is no hope without Jesus Christ, you're going to hell. Okay, what does that actually mean? There is no hope. I have not lost hope. I don't even think about hope. I just live my life. So what is your problem? Because this is now about you. What problem are you having, Sword, that you need to share your pain with all of us? In fact, we'd no doubt all like to have a discourse with you, see if we can help you out. Because by you coming into a chat room and warning us about a mythical figure, it just, just doesn't have the same impact as it would if when you come in here warning us about something that was real and imminent, then yeah, I get it. But this, Jesus Christ is a myth. The whole supernatural is a myth. God is a myth. Everything that you say, everything that you quote from your fairy tale book of scriptures is a myth. Okay? Right. Blood Moon, welcome. You don't have superpowers that makes you know for sure there is a God. You only read a book, so did we. Other than that, you don't have anything to add. Indeed. Thank you for that. Sword writes, a hope is all you have between disaster of eternal suffering and salvation through faith in the blood sacrifice of Jesus Christ so that you can be saved from jail. This doesn't make any sense. This is like word salad. All right. Okay. Hope is all you have between disaster of eternal suffering. So eternal suffering is the disaster. And salvation through faith in the blood sacrifice? Dude, are you getting all gory? Whenever whenever somebody says blood sacrifice, or I read blood sacrifice, what comes into my head is a bull in a bullfight, goring this bullfighter or anybody, whoever he gets, and just grabbing, sticking them with his horns, and then throwing him up in the air, and there's blood all over the place. But it makes no sense when you say blood sacrifice. It's like cannibalistic. Especially if you're Catholic, then you go to the blood sacrifice that he made, which is a sacrifice, and if it's a sacrifice, it's all gone. But the Catholics have to drink the blood on a Sunday as if there's more blood. Even though the blood sacrifice, being a sacrifice, means that by definition that there's no more blood. How do you answer that, Sword? Okay. Oh, Hillary, go for it. If claim blah 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 and don't convince you of its relevance or accuracy, have I given you a valid warning? At Crush brings a sword. Hillary, how do we gain this faith? Great question. I mean, I have an answer. Gain this faith by empirically showing that there is no other reality than faith, than Jesus Christ. which is nonsense, right? But I interrupted you. Is it an act that a human makes? Faith? Talking about faith? Or must God do this? Yeah, well, again, God is presupposed. I can't presuppose a non-existent entity. I can't presuppose a mythical entity and convert that presupposition of a mythical entity into an actual reality. Nonsense. So let's see what brings us. What Sword says. He says the blood of Jesus is what you need in order to be saved from eternal damnation. Your blood is not welcome in the kingdom. You Christians say the wildest, weirdest things. Oh, for fuck's sake. We only need faith in the works of Jesus when he shed his blood for our sins. Faith alone is all we need. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that particular sentence. We could probably have a whole discussion about it online. I'll open up a room and we all come in and we talk. And I tell you what, if you could come into a room when I open and you explain to us how mythical Jesus means anything in the real world, and if you have a rebuttal to mythical Jesus and you think that there's a real Jesus, I am willing to give you the chance to go where zillions of other people have gone before and failed to prove that Jesus actually exists. All right, but we'll carry on. Blood Moon, you still just saying words. This is not a hocus pocus movie where you say words and turn humans into cats. This is reality. Yes. When you get sick, you go to a doctor. Especially when you need a heart transplant. No, Christians don't go to doctors. Blood Moon. Christians go to church. They pray to Jesus and everything is fixed. That's how Christianity works. It's a perfect system. Blood Moon asks, so how do you know about Jesus? Hillary's emails, I'm determining if Christ brings a sword, is works-based. Universalist, Reformed Calvinist, etc. You see, that is already too deep for me. Because God is a myth. It's all a myth to start off with. So when you start to bring in this works-based, Universalist, Reformed, blah, 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 Calvinist, it's all just reworking an original work of fiction. Especially the Protestants. I mean, all this stuff you're saying is all Protestant stuff, right? For, 1,300 years, the Catholic Church was the only thing going. And now... No, for 1,300 years or 1,200 years, the Catholic Church was the only game in town. And then the Protestants came and exploded into a zillion different groups of Protestants. None of it makes sense, because there's one fictional character. Well, actually, now it all starts to make sense, because if there's more than one fiction, I mean, if the character is fictional, then it explains why there's so many different interpretations and stories and beliefs and followings and cults and so forth, so on and so forth. But I ramble on while you guys are carrying on in the chat. So let me carry on here. Let me catch up. So how did you know about Jesus? Asked Blood Moon. Blood Moon, I guess it's just you and me here now. Actually, I think there's only one person watching right now. Someone dropped out. So, Sword, you say there is a 6,000 year window of existence, which is where you are today. What does that mean? You're 6,000. There is a 6,000 year window of existence, which is where you are today. What the hell does that mean? I don't get it. Anyway, depending on how you receive the word of God will determine if you are subject to the wrath or glorified by God. The issue, the problem here, Sword, is God is a myth. There is no God. You're presupposing a myth. So whatever you're talking about is kind of I don't know, wishful thinking maybe. And let's see, you carry on. Our works are useless to God unless we have faith in the works. Our works are useless to God unless we have faith in the works of Jesus Christ. Think of Jesus as the head of the pyramid, and we are the body of the pyramid. Without the head, the body has no direction. Okay, this is where you're absolutely wrong, Sword, because if you've ever researched the buildings of pyramids, they start at the very, very bottom at the base, big, and they build up from the base up to the apex, to the tip. The head, let's say. So the head is the last thing that is put into place. So if you think of Jesus as the head of the pyramid and we are the body of the pyramid, we don't need Jesus, because the head of the pyramid was placed last, and we were obviously functioning just fine as the body. The body doesn't need a head of a pyramid. It functions just fine. Everything is in engineering exactitude, so nothing will fail. So your whole analogy between Jesus and the pyramid stuff is something that you might want to reconsider. The Great Pyramid of Giza is built underground quite deeply before it rises to the surface. It doesn't make a difference. It's still going to have a head, and it still doesn't need the head because it functions quite successfully. The head is a decoration. The head is not Jesus Christ. It's just a piece of stone which is completing that shape where it reaches a point. Does nothing. There is no head on the pyramid, but you just said there was a head on the pyramid. There's no head on the pyramid because Jesus was rejected. Jesus is the cornerstone rejected by Israel. The top of the pyramid is the throne of God. You see where you're going? You're not making any sense whatsoever. Would you like to come into the chat room? I've got a Discord room open, which is where I'm broadcasting right now. You want to come and talk about and try to explain to me all this gobbledygook that I'm reading from you? I'm prepared to listen, but you have to be prepared as well to listen, and you have to be prepared for the first time in your life to think critically. Just don't accept everything you've been told. Okay? Don't accept everything I say. Don't accept everything anybody else says. Think critically until you understand it yourself. And the best way to do that is to try and get into the head of the people that you are opposing, and see, like I've done. I've gotten into the heads of theists all over the place, whatever denomination, and I've spent time amongst certain denominations, lots of time, and I've gotten to know them very well. So the sort of linear thinking of theists regarding God and the presupposition thereof is a barrier to theists. You need to. That's what when I say think critically, that's what I mean. Oh, okay. Now, Sword says, you don't understand what I am saying, therefore you cannot get into the head of a Christian. I don't need to get to the head of a Christian, although I do understand what you're saying. You're saying that God is super duper, and we just have to accept that God is super duper for no particular reason. I ask you, Sword, how did your God come into existence? Please explain to me. Now, you see, because you are being so humiliated by me, and you are quite angry, understandably, and so you say that I am blind and unable to understand. And then you say God is beyond our ability to understand, but God is just a myth. So, in a way, you're right, because God is a myth, and myths can be modified and changed over time. You're not angry. I'm not blind, you know. I mean, now I'm blind, but now I'm not blind. You see how that works? Science. See, this is science. Your mention of God, you haven't explained to me how your God came into existence. You haven't explained to me how you, as a human being with the same makeup as every other human being, can know things that are impossible to know. You tell me that. I don't understand the Great Pyramid of Giza. You do understand that there was a time when the Great Pyramid of Giza hadn't been built yet, didn't exist. So if the pyramids don't exist, and they didn't exist, obviously for the very long time until they were built, which is long before your Jesus myth came into existence, what possible correlation could there be between the pyramids that were built like 20,000 years ago, or maybe I don't know when, but a hell of a long time ago, versus this Jesus myth, which is just made up 2,000 years ago, 2,100 years ago? So what your response to me is, the stars are therefore before the pyramid. The pyramid is before Scripture. The stars, pyramid, and Scripture all tell the same story. Well, maybe to you, they tell the same story. But to rationalists and realists and commonsensicalists and skeptics like me, whatever you've said here has made absolutely no sense, carries no weight, and is pretty empty in terms of intellectual contribution to this channel. This is the channel where Christianity comes to die, And when I see people like you, Sword, making all these specious, spurious, vacuous claims in the chat, then I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I am a sun worshipper. What do you mean a sun worshipper? The sun exists, and so do I. Where does the worship come in? I understand that the sun is what gives us everything. The sun is what gives us life. If it wasn't for the sun, we wouldn't exist. So it is to the sun that you owe your life, your existence. But the sun is just a ball of nitrogen in nuclear fission and fusion and all that kind of stuff. So understanding that, yes, the sun is essentially what gives you life and nothing else, would go a long way to curbing your anger towards atheists who refuse to be gaslit by your stories that this God thing has any control of anything, and you know it. You more and more you become less and less irrelevant, you Christians. What is more powerful, the sun or a hurricane? Do you fear the sun more than a hurricane? Why? Why would I fear the sun, and why would I fear a hurricane? The sun can cause me to. The sun can cause me to frazzle and burn up, and the hurricane can cause me to be thrown in the air and be torn up or whatever. But as long as you stay out of the sun and you protect yourself from the path of the hurricane, you're fine. Nothing to fear here. Now, you suggest that I should fear God because God... I'm sorry, but I love comedy. You should fear God. God can put you in hell. All right. Firstly, let's establish that God exists. Come on, let's have your best argument. You're making a lot of claims and you're not providing me any argument. So this is getting to be rather boring, Sword. If we're not going to take it to a different level, we're going to go back to Darth Dawkins. I'm telling you. I'll give you the arguments already presented and you've made up your mind. Well, you haven't presented any arguments. I've presented arguments, but you have not presented one argument. All you've made are claims. Claim 1, claim 2, claim 3, claim 4, claim N. Not one argument to support any one of your claims. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with Skylar Fiction and Gary, and I will prepare a room that can be open that we will, and you and others can come into and have a chat for later, okay? If you can handle it. But in the meantime, listen to these arguments that show that God is is pretty much a conceptual joke.
True, where you cannot be wrong.
Yeah, there are certain things that we can test beyond a shadow of a doubt to find out if they're true or not. So my question is to you.
That did not answer my question.
That's not to you. I answered the question. It may not be to your.
Wait, what are these things that you can prove without a shadow of a doubt?
Hold on. No, we're going back and forth here. Yeah, I answered the question.
I'd like a clarification on that answer because that was vague. The clarification to that answer. Can you tell me one thing that you know is true where you cannot possibly be wrong?
One thing. Oh yeah, that I'm not your God. I'm not the Christian God.
Okay, how do you know that?
That's your question. That was your question. I answered
That's
it.
fine. That's fine.
All right. Do you believe in objective morality?
I believe that God's character is immutable, and we all.
You see, just to interject, every time he says God, 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 it's always presupposition. He's always presupposing. And what I don't like is when we accept the presupposition. Because the only reason for accepting the presupposition of God is for wasting time and getting views and likes and clicks and subscriptions and whatnot. But in my opinion, we should not proceed beyond the God attributes, etc., until the presupposition of God has been eliminated and God has actually been established. Okay, as long as God is a presupposition without any merit, there should be nothing else to talk about. And that is the big mistake that we make in the atheist community. We've got to stick to the first presupposition, and we've got to really work these Christians on how to at least convince us that there's a starting point where we can at least agree on something and then take it from there. Right now, we don't have a starting point. God does not exist. God is a myth. And God is and your God is a joke. So if you want to have a serious conversation, then it can only be about your presupposition and how you argue for it. That can be the only way. And now, with that rant being over, why don't we just carry on with our buddy Skylar?
Are obligated because God says so to comport ourselves with his character. Now, my question to you is this.
No, I get two questions. That was the first one.
Go ahead.
You didn't say yes, it was objective. So is that so I want to clarify because you didn't actually answer the question. I asked you if morality was objective, and you didn't answer. You just talked about God's nature. So
no, I told you I don't argue. I don't use phraseology such as objective morality exists. I've already explained that to you several times.
Yeah, but I'm not asking you what kind of language you use. I'm asking you by definition is by definition God's morality objective? That was the question.
God does not have morality. God's character is an objective fact of reality, and we have an obligation to comport ourselves.
Did he say God's character is an objective fact of reality? You see, we miss these things when we listen to Gary Milne here. Listen to this again.
That was the first one.
Go ahead.
You didn't say yes, it was objective. So is that so I want to clarify because you didn't actually answer the question. I asked you if morality was objective, and
Okay, if morality is objective, that's the question.
you didn't answer. You just talked about God's nature. So
No,
can
I
you
told you
Right, right.
I don't argue. I don't use phraseology such as objective morality exists. I've already explained that to you several
Oh,
times.
yeah, but I'm not asking you what kind of language you use. I'm asking you by definition
I answered your question.
is by definition God's morality objective? That was the question.
God does not have morality. God's character is an objective fact of reality.
There, he said it. God's character is an objective fact of reality. That is a claim, Gary. I really would love to hear your argument that would convince me, even Skylar, that what you say has any merit. Because what you're saying is you're just picking it out of your ass. Or somebody else's, probably Artangelo's ass.
And we have an obligation to comport ourselves with his character because he says so.
See? Because he says so. But he doesn't say so because he doesn't exist. And this is where the atheists kind of get gaslit a bit. They get so inundated with, it's like the news. You hear the same lies over and over and over again in the news every single day. Lie, 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 lie. Eventually you're going to start believing it. This is what has happened, what the Christians have done, what the theists have done. They've gone God, 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 God. So we're now at the point of just, okay, God, whatever, like we haven't actually stopped and said, wait, God is a myth. God doesn't exist. Can you unbaffle my mind? Because God cannot exist. God is impossible in my mind. Can you really, really, really convince me that a supernatural does exist? I will bet you $1,000 that you will not be able to prove that a supernatural actually exists. Welcome back, Hillary. Three in chat, one watching. Yeah, I think that I'm not quite sure how that works, to be honest with you, but I think I've had my little rant, my ranty poo. Let's carry on.
I'd like you to demonstrate that.
Okay, no, because he says so.
I'd like you to demonstrate that.
Okay, no, because he says so.
No, I said I'd like you to demonstrate that.
Okay, good. Now.
For my second question.
Okay, good. The answer that he demonstrates it because he always tells the truth and he cannot be wrong.
That's right.
Now,
that's what his argument is.
You said you're not God. Is that by virtue that your reasoning is reliable?
It's by definition.
Okay, why should I accept your definition?
You don't have to. I'm just using the Christian definition.
Okay, good. So you can. So in other words, you're giving me a definitional defense, and you can't demonstrate that it is the case that you are not God.
Oh, I can demonstrate it. You're just not going to accept the demonstration.
Okay, is your demonstration that you are not God by virtue of your reason where you cannot be wrong?
By definition, I can't be wrong on the specific thing.
What do you mean, you definition you can't be wrong?
Because if I was your God, right? The example you use is God can't lie. Well, I'm not your God. If I was your God, I would now be lying to you by saying that I'm not your God. So by definition, God, I can't be your God. So I can. Okay. So we can all know. And I just demonstrated. Is there anybody in this room that disagrees that I've not demonstrated that I am not your God?
Are you arguing by virtue of the law of non-contradiction?
I am arguing by definition that I am not your God, and that is one thing that I can know.
Okay, I asked you a question.
Can you define the law of non-contradiction?
Hold on a second. I will repeat the question that he did not answer.
Okay.
Is your argument founded and rooted by virtue of the law of non-contradiction?
Is it rooted in the law of non-contradiction? I believe contradictions are invalid, and then I think that that is invalid for me to say that.
I'm not asking you what you believe.
Okay. Well, maybe clarify what you mean by your statement, because maybe I'm not understanding.
I'll ask you the question. Is your argument that you know something for certain based upon the law of non-contradiction is absolute and universal?
I don't think I've made a assertion that the law of non-contradiction is universal.
I didn't ask you if you made an assertion. I said, is your argument that you are using, is it dependent upon the law of non-contradiction?
No, it's dependent on both of us agreeing to the same terms that.
No, it has nothing to do
I'm not finished. I'm not finished. You're talking over me. So it's dependent on the fact that we both agreed that contradictions are invalid. If we both agree, I'm not done talking. I'm not done talking, Darwins. I'm not done talking. Thank you. So it is dependent. I appreciate that. So it is dependent on the idea, in order for me to prove my argument and demonstrate it, that we have some basic assumptions we agree on. If we both agree that contradictions are invalid, and I can show you an actual contradiction, then we both agree it's invalid, and that's what my argument falls onto.
Okay, you and I do not share basic worldviews, so there is not a substantive agreement. Now, I'm going to ask you.
This is your second question.
No, that's not my second question. I just made a statement. That's all.
Your first question.
Statement is not. You know what? I would appreciate having an adult conversation with you instead of you acting like a teenager.
I would like less ad hominem attacks, but
I'm not giving you an ad hominem attack. I'm making an observation that you're acting like a teenager.
All right, well, get to your point.
Okay. Well, I'd like to have an adult conversation with you.
I would like to too.
I made a brief rebuttal statement. Now, when you are making an argumentation that you are not God, is your argument inherently depending on the truthfulness of the law of non-contradiction?
No, I just explained my answer to you.
Okay, so your argument is not using one of the prime laws of logic?
No, my argument is relying on that me and you both agree that contradictions are invalid. This is your second question, by the way. So I'm going to answer.
No, I didn't ask you. I didn't ask you what you believed.
Okay, re-ask the question.
I said, is your argument dependent upon the assumption that the law of non-contradiction is universal?
Oh my God. Listen, this is what I've made up. The laws of firstly, hold on a second. The laws of logic are universal. In every instance, the law of identity, that A equals A, it fits, it works. In every instant, A equals A is true. And in every instance, A cannot be not A. Every single instance, A is A cannot be not A. Simple? Okay. So, if the sword guy is watching, I'm going to throw a Trinitarian dilemma at you. So, if A equals A, then tell me how this works. The Trinity. You got four entities in the Trinity. You got God. You got the Father, and you got the Son, and you got the Holy Spirit. So there's 4 different entities of the Trinity. Why do they call it a Trinity when there's 4 entities? The fuck, I don't know. But anyway, let me just make things perfectly clear. That the universal law of identity states that A equals A cannot be not A. So, let's do it. Let's apply this to the Trinity. So we got God, we've got the Son, we've got the Father, and we've got the Holy Spirit. There's 4 things. Okay, so let's start off with God. God is God. God cannot be not God. The Father is the Father. The Father is not the Father. The Father is not God. Same that we can do with the Son, and the same we can do with the Holy Spirit. So there are 4 different constituents of this Trinity, of this. There's 4 different components to this Trinity, which I'll never understand. But neither of them is the other. According to the universal laws of logic, they all are themselves. They are not one of the other. Okay? So right there, the Christian Trinity falls apart. Once the Christian Trinity story falls apart, so does Christianity. And I think that's why we don't talk about it on the mainstream media, but we talk about it here on the Sydney Winston channel. This is hardcore. You know, mucking about here. So I've set the Discord or the chat room for multiple people. I have no one watching right now, so this is set up for if it picks up. But in the meantime, I think what we should probably do is head on back to. Oops, where were we? There we go. Let's head on back to these guys here and let them carry on talking. Remember, room is open. Come on in. Let's talk. But it's hardcore in here, okay? Don't wear no ballet shoes into this room.
No.
Okay, so basically, your argument does not employ the fundamental laws of logic?
No. Okay, and that's the second answer. That's the second question.
No.
That was the second question.
Wait, so you just admitted your argument was? Or your
Just
No,
said.
I explained it, but see, the problem is like
He just said that his reasoning does not employ or depend on the laws of logic. Did everybody hear that?
what I meant.
Yeah, you did say that, dude.
Yeah, well, let me clarify then, just to make sure everyone understands. And if I misspoke, I apologize. Hey, Darwin, can I speak? Thanks. So I'm going to go back because what he's doing is just asking the same question over and over again, and I answered it pretty clearly. What my argument depends on, in order to demonstrate this argument, is that all it depends on is us agreeing, the people having the argument in the room, that contradictions are invalid. Now, unless Darwin, in his worldview, doesn't believe contradictions are invalid, my argument is demonstrated. So what he wants to do is he wants to basically keep asking questions that aren't relevant to it, right? And he's asked 3 or 4 questions, but he keeps claiming he hasn't asked any. But that's what it was relevant on. Of course, I argue with logic, right? All I'm claiming is, but I'm not making the assertion that the laws of logic are universal because I don't have a way to demonstrate that.
Okay, good. I'd like to respond now. Okay, the mistake that you keep on making, and this is about the 4th time that you said it, that there is an agreed upon basis that in both of our worldviews, because you're speaking from your worldview, I'm speaking from my worldview, you fallaciously claimed that there was an agreement that the laws of logic exist in both respective worldviews. I never agreed to that. So you need to stop repeating that. I do not agree that from within your worldview, it can be demonstrated that the laws of logic are universal. Now, I will ask you again, is the argument and the reasoning that you are employing, okay, I have 2 questions. Is the reasoning and the argument that you're employing dependent upon the laws of logic? Yes or no? That's my first question.
Okay, first, you said something that I didn't assert. I asserted that we both agree that contradictions are invalid. That we agree on. No. That's what you do. You do not agree with that.
I do not agree that from your worldview.
That's not what I said.
Valid.
I didn't say from my worldview.
I just don't agree with your worldview. So please stop saying that.
That's fine. You don't have to agree with my worldview, but you do agree in your worldview.
Please stop putting words in my mouth.
Okay. Do you not believe that? Do you not believe contradictions are invalid?
I am not asking you to discuss my worldview at the moment. I asked you a question. Now I will ask you the question again. And he will either answer the question or he will dodge. Now, here's my question for you. Is your reasoning right now and your argumentation dependent upon the laws of logic?
It's dependent on my statements being logical and us agreeing that contradictions are invalid.
You did not answer my question.
You can say that. That's fine. And we just disagree.
Is your argument and reasoning dependent upon the law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle?
Maybe.
The answer should be yes.
Okay. Is the answer yes, no, or I don't know?
You know, Darwin, since the fact you won't even answer a simple question like, do you believe contradictions are invalid? Why am I going to allow you to keep
dodging?
No, because you've asked me 4 questions, Darwin. You've asked me question after question, and you're interrupting me now. You're over-talking me once again.
Because
this is what you do. Yeah, but dodging is not an excuse to over-talk me. I believe we have rules in this room, and the rules in this room is for the other. You're still doing it.
Good.
You get so angry when people over-talk you. Thank you. I appreciate that again. So once again, what Darwin is doing is he's trying to actually escape any kind of holding to any kind of position, right? Because this is his tactical argument, is to try to keep focusing on what I believe, right? So I asked him a question. First, I asked him to demonstrate objective morality exists. Then he's trying to do this weird thing where he doesn't really claim objective morality by definition, which is very strange. It's the only Christian I've ever met that doesn't believe in objective morality. He avoided that. Right? He avoided saying that he believes contradictions are invalid in his worldview, which is also very strange. Why not just say yes? We may have different reasons for why we came to this, like why we believe contradictions are invalid, but there's no harm in actually agreeing to that. The problem is he understands my point, and my point stands. If we both agree on definitions, if we both agree in our worldviews, now we may have different reasons we come to our worldviews. But if in both our worldviews we agree that contradictions are invalid, and then I show a contradiction, that would make that invalid. Darwin, please go on.
Is your reasoning and your argumentation dependent on the truthfulness that the laws of logic, the law of identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle are universal and invariant?
What it's dependent on is that when I make an argument and I'm having an argument with somebody, is that we agree on certain terms. That's what it's dependent on.
Question.
Yes, it is.
No, I don't think either because there's like you guys are just going into hamster wheel here.
Yeah.
Either he can't answer the question, or maybe he's not understanding it the way you're posing it or something. But
if he wants to reframe it, I'm happy to hear how he's reframing it. But I think what he's trying. What he does. This is like presuppositional at its best. Like they have a script that they use, and this is the script, and he's trying to get me to a certain point, and I'm not going to answer the questions he wants me to answer. I'm going to answer them in a truthful and honest way, and that's what my argument is dependent on. What you're doing is you're strawmanning me. You're creating my argument for me and saying this is how you're arguing, when what my argument is that as long as we agree that contradictions are invalid in both of our worldviews, then I can demonstrate that they are invalid. Go ahead.
That's the fifth time that you said that. I do not agree with anything in your worldview, okay?
Okay.
Now,
you don't believe in contradictions being invalid.
I do not believe that you can demonstrate from within your worldview that contradictions are always invalid. Now, my question to you is this. It's a very simple question. Is the reasoning and argument that you are employing, does it depend on the laws of logic being universal and invariant, meaning that the laws of logic are true at all times and all places? Is your argument and reasoning dependent upon that?
No, because they can just be relevant here and not be relevant in some other universe or parallel dimension. And if they're relevant here, it would make sense. Fine.
Did everybody hear what he just said?
Mm-hmm.
I heard it.
Okay, you heard what he just said. So basically, do you understand that the laws of logic within the realm of philosophy is considered universally necessary for rationality and intelligibility?
Sure. Yeah.
Now,
can you demonstrate they exist?
Do you reject the idea?
You've asked me a lot of questions. I'm asking you a question.
Can I demonstrate?
I just answer your question.
Yeah.
I just answer your question.
Yes, I can. Yeah,
Go ahead. Demonstrate that the laws of logic are universal.
Because the Christian God says they exist.
No, that's an assertion. That's not a demonstration.
No, he says they exist.
You're asserting that.
No, I'm repeating what he has said.
He talks
in the Bible, God.
The book says that.
That's right.
That's not God. That's the book. The Bible.
Okay. Now, here's the problem. I know you don't reject that. You reject the Christian God as the final authority to determine the way things actually are. But since you reject that, what is your final authority that you would use as a foundation to determine how things actually are, as opposed to merely believing?
What does that have to do with your assertion you just made?
What is your final authority? What is your final authority to determine what is actually the case in reality, as opposed to you merely having a strong belief that it is the case?
What does that have to do with the assertion you just made?
Okay. Well, listen, here's another way of putting it. Like, maybe I may be wrong about this, but like,
okay, what we're getting here is a complete dodge.
No, you're the one dodging. You're the one not answering questions. You didn't. You BS'd around objective morality. You BS'd around the idea I'm still talking, sir. I'm still talking. I answered your question. Hey, no, I'm still talking.
You're lying. I answered your question.
Darwin, I'm responding.
You guys both cut me off.
Yeah, no. But the thing is Darwin makes assertions. He doesn't back them up. He claims he doesn't say objective morality exists, which is very strange for a Christian. He doesn't agree that contradictions are invalid. Once again, strange. I don't understand.
I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, what he's saying is like with. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I did cut you off spoken earlier, so please go on. I apologize.
So like, I want to do like a thought experiment, like a hypothetical, right?
Please.
Let's say, like, I no longer dependent on God for like how I obtain what I call ultimate truth, or what I believe to know is you know what I mean? What I know, or what I say I know. I'm not going to no longer depend on God. If I'm going to remove him from the equation, what do I depend on? Do I depend on just my own human reasoning, or do I depend on something outside of myself that may be better?
Can I ask you this? When you say no, are you saying like absolute knowledge? Like in the sense that you can absolutely know certain with 100% certainty?
What I believe I know, I will say that.
Okay.
Because
what a stupid thing to say.
Is it possible to truly know anything if we can't verify it?
Well, there are things we can verify.
What?
Right?
I think
I'm not talking with spoken right now. Well, I mean, yeah, something we can verify. I could verify that I'm a male. I could.
Can you really? I mean, can you verify that you're not a brain in a vat?
Oh, we're not gonna go there. Brain in a vat. Oh, come on. Do we have to? We're gonna have to suffer through this, I think.
Where did that come from? What does it have to do with anything?
Exactly.
If we can't
Yeah.
verify that we're not like in some kind of matrix situation, then how can we like if we can't verify?
Well, that's the dumbest thing, because the only time the only reason this guy's mentioning the Matrix is because some other guy some decades ago thought about a Matrix, wrote a story about it, and published it, and they made a movie or two, whatever. So now this guy is using that that brain that came up with the fiction of the Matrix to reify it, to make it into a reality. Matrix is maybe it's a possibility. Oh, we don't know everything. Oh, please. So I'm not 100% sure how the Matrix thing actually works, but it's kind of a common cliche, which I'm not sure what it means and why the people use it. But it looks like somebody was kind of astounded that the word Matrix came up. So let's see what results.
Oh,
That
sure.
much, how do we know that what
I
reality
got
that
you.
we're perceiving now is
Yeah.
real?
Okay.
Well, what I would say
There's
to that, spoken to respond, is that like if we're going to go that far, right? If we're going to use that kind of example where how do I know I'm not a brain in the vat? You'll be in the same boat, right? Because then I can say, how do you know you're not in the brain in the vat? And then it's not just the vat that's telling you that there's a God and all this kind of stuff like that, or God's lying.
All right, I'd
So,
like
like
to
those
speak
kind of
to that.
arguments get kind of what it is, spoken, is they just kind of get us nowhere, right? And that's what I find frustrating. It's not like I love the theological discussion where we actually discuss scripture and we get into those kind of topics where we can actually discuss these things. And that's why originally I asked Darwin to demonstrate objective morality, because that would be an interesting argument, right?
Well, the
But-
reason.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
It's
No,
my
please.
turn, spoken.
Yeah.
just
well,
real quick,
you're
I'm
saying,
gonna say
yeah,
one
please,
more
spoken.
last
Yeah,
thing,
go ahead.
then I'm gonna
Yeah.
be done with it. The reason why I say it because like with if I have God to depend on, I don't have to I don't have to believe that I'm a brain in a vat because God gives me the verification that I needed. If I was to remove that, then what could I use to therefore say that I'm not a brain in a vat? I don't know other than my own human reason.
I still think brain in
but
the
that-
vat
have to say about
Yeah, but
is the
vat
stupid
could be
argument.
telling you that God is clarifying and telling you that you're not the brain in the vat, but you really are a brain in the vat, right? There's
Right,
no way to
so-
actually verify that without just kind of assuming.
You know what I could never really get. Another thing I can't really wrap my head around is when people say to you, if God told you to kill your family, would you do it? I mean, that is kind of the most bizarre kind of a question one could ever have asked of him or her. Because you could pretty much justify any crime, stealing, killing, damaging, injuring, wounding, destroying, any crime, by God told me to do it. And if God does exist, and it says so on the United States money, then there's your defense. Each and every single person convicted of a no, not convicted, indicted on a criminal offense should use God told me to do it. You can't prove he didn't. You can't prove that God didn't tell you to do something. Correct? So when you do a good deed, when you help a disabled person in their daily life doing a chore for him or her, you could say, God told me to do it, and everybody would believe you and leave you alone. But if you start to prey on these disabled people and start, injuring them, humiliating them, stealing, whatever, and say, God told me to do it, surely that's just as valid an argument as when you justified your good deeds by God told you to do it. Now that makes a whole mockery out of theism, out of Christianity, out of the supernatural. It makes a whole mockery out of that. So I'd like to actually have a few people in a room one day where we'll bring that subject up and talk. We'll watch a little bit more of this. And how long have I been going on here? Like an hour and 30 minutes? It's usually an hour is usually enough. So we'll listen to a point where we think I can cut it off because it might get boring. If it does get boring, I'll cut it off.
Okay, spoken. The debate is actually over because Schuyler conceded that his reasoning and his argumentation does not depend upon the laws of logic.
You see, this is what this Gary does. Gary Dawkins. He's like the judge and executioner. He'll just all of a sudden step in and say, this is over because of this reason, where the reason is dumb. And he does it. And he gets pissed off. And, I don't like that about him.
Logic at all. He made
another thing I don't like
clear.
about him.
That's not true.
Therefore,
you see, he lies. Gary just fucking lies. There's one thing I don't like when these Christians do it. And I do to the Christians in a way that is satirical. But when the Christians say to us atheists think that all they are is a bag of chemicals. Atheists think that their great grandfather was a rock. All this kind of shit. It annoys me, infuriates me, and it wants me to say to the Christians, don't tell us what we think. We'll tell you what we think. Okay? Don't start telling us what we think, because that's when you show yourselves to be weak, cowardly keyboard warriors. That's it. So, and this I'm talking specifically to you. I'm saying specifically to you, Gary Mellon.
okay, I'll ask you again in the room again, and then
asking me again isn't going to change my question.
You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me.
That's the thing he does. Yeah, he says, "I'll ask you again," and he'll ask exactly the same question, and then Schuyler is interjecting by saying, "Hold on a second, you've already asked me," because Gary Dawkins didn't get an answer that was satisfactory. He's going to ask it again. I mean, what a con artist.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to ask you a brief question, and then when you briefly answer it, I would like to continue with my rebuttal. Does your reasoning and argumentation depend on the laws of logic being absolute and universal?
Okay, he's asked that question a half a dozen times, if not more. And I want to listen to it just one more time.
And his argumentation?
Oops, didn't get back far enough. Oops, too far. Oh shit! No, I don't know
that. Then what could I use? Therefore say that I'm not a brain in a vat. I don't.
As contradictions being invalid. That's what it depends on.
Okay.
Okay, so what Schuyler has just meant, he said, when I asked him the question, does your reasoning and your argumentation depend upon the fundamental laws of logic, the law?
Okay, all right. I have something to say about that. The answer, of course, is no, because I could argue with reason that I identify as a willow tree. Okay? Is Sidney Winston a willow tree? No. Did Sidney Winston make a statement that Sidney Winston is a willow tree? Yes. So I can make statements all day long without regard to the laws of logic. If I were to do that, that's fine. So, to answer Gary Dawkins' question, no, you do not need the laws of logic, even though they're universal, to back up every statement that you say. Because not every statement is a statement of stoicism or of brilliant insight to something. Some statements are satirical, nonsensical, like the Christians' statements. Well, they're all nonsensical, but that's fine. The laws of logic still exist, even though your statements. For example, the laws of logic exist even though your argument for the Trinity breaks down. It breaks down at the application of the laws of logic. I hope I got that message across. I'll try it again at some point and rehash it some other way, but that's it for now.
Law of identity, law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle. His answer was no. Did anybody else hear him say that as well for confirmation?
Did anybody hear the second part?
I'm not done. I'm not done yet. Please don't interrupt.
But his answer being no is not incorrect. Doesn't make a difference. It could be yes, it could be no. It's irrelevant. The laws of logic exists no matter what statement Scholar Fiction comes up with. No matter what statement Gary Dawkins comes up with.
You asked the question to everybody. I'm just answering the question.
Did you hear him say his reasoning does not depend on the fundamental laws of logic? Spoken.
It doesn't have to if it's satirical. Or even if it's serious but flawed.
I did hear that, which is kind of why I want to say to Skylar, you're kind of digging yourself.
Okay, well let me finish now. I just wanted confirmation that I heard it correctly. So Spoken has confirmed this. Now, since he says that his reasoning does not depend on the law of identity and the law of non-contradiction, then he cannot employ referring to an identity's properties, nor can he appeal to contradictions being invalid in his reasoning. Therefore, since all human communication in terms of speaking, reasoning, and arguing employs the laws of logic, then he can't actually argue and reason. Now, one other final thing. He said that
But that would apply to you as well, Gary Dawkins. If you want to stick to the laws of logic and reason, then you have to dump the Trinity. Boom, dump the Trinity. Dump the idiotic concept of a supernatural dimension. Dump this nonsense mythical God. Just get rid of everything that you can't 100% show. Okay? Your biggest accessory you have is philosophy. That's it. All your arguments are in some way philosophical. And then you dismiss science because science was at some point, because the foundations of science at some point back in the past were foundational. the foundations of science was religion. No, I don't think that's correct either. The foundations of science come from philosophy. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Sorry. Let's give it 5 more minutes.
His reasoning and argumentation depends upon agreement. So what Schuyler has conceded to is that reasoning and logic are always valid is if both parties agree upon it. So if both parties agree that contradictions are not invalid, then you can reason by virtue that contradictions. But if all contradictions are valid, what that means is it's called the principle of explosion, okay? Which means that.
All right, that's bullshit. The principle of explosion. The principle of explosion, which means I'm not even interested in what it means because I know that this is gonna be bullshit. Okay, so here we are. Today is the 2nd of July 2023, and we have been listening to and critiquing and getting angry at a broadcast from May 2016. The room is open, but there are no viewers, so obviously no one's going to join. And so with that in mind, I have to say, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, liking, and donating. We'll see you next time.